I call Sir William Seo.
Mr. Speaker, from the outset of this debate, Labor supported having this bill advanced to the Select Committee stage. It was important from our point of view that the general public be given the opportunity to participate and give their evidence in such an important change to the Resource Management Act. We raised our concerns at the rushed and hasty manner in which government wanted to proceed with this bill, and as a responsible opposition party, Labor also expressed our willingness to work constructively with the government to improve the operation and performance of the RMA, provided that the proposed changes do not undermine environmental protection and that it does not undermine public participation. We believed from the beginning that if government wasn't so intent on showing off, flexing its ministerial muscles and its new powers as the government, and that if the government were genuine and actually listening, that we would have arrived at a bill that allowed for more efficient processes and still maintain environmental protection and meaningful public participation. Earlier in the debate, Mr. Speaker, a National MP from Auckland commented that she was concerned by her government's amendments, but when asked if she would do something about her concern, there was silence. Her behaviour, however, highlights a pattern that this government seems to have well rehearsed in their 9 months of power. The pattern is one where they attempt to show empathy. They say they are concerned, they attempt to portray that they are listening, they use the word listening repeatedly. This gives the impression that they are consulting with people, but the reality is that they'll go ahead and do what they want to do anyway, irrespective of whether the weight of evidence was against them, as is the case in 3 specific areas of this bill. Protecting the environment and public participation in the decision-making in managing and developing our natural resources are the 2 pillars which underpin the RMA Act. While Labor supports the bill generally, there are 3 specific areas where we are still in disagreement with the government. We disagree with the changes to the notification of resource consents. We do not support the removal of the Minister of Conservation's decision-making ability in respect to restricted coastal activities. We oppose the removal of local authorities' ability to have general tree protection rules in their district plans. I want to focus on 2 of these areas, Mr. Speaker. Labor opposes the changes to the notification of resource consent. The current Act contains the presumption that consent authorities will notify a resource consent application unless they are satisfied that the effects will be no more than minor and approval of the affected parties is obtained, unless the application pertains to a controlled activity, in which case public notification is not required, unless a rule in the plan or proposed plan requires it, but notice must be served on any affected persons, or unless the relevant plan specifically states notification is not required. What the government is now intent on doing is to change all this by introducing Clause 68, which will alter the process for notification of resource consents. The government amendments was bulldozed in the House Committee stage earlier tonight, even though 75% of submitters on this particular area oppose this clause. What does this amendment mean? It means the national government is designed to neutralise the Act and remove the presumption towards the notification of resource consents. It means the threshold for when public notification is required is raised, and the threshold for affected parties is also raised. With this amendment, the government lays out a foundation where the potential for reckless and irresponsible development can take place by some unscrupulous corporation, without them taking responsibility for any damage to our natural environment and with little concern for the impact on the lives of local residents and their communities. It would seem this specific amendment, sir, that the government gives big corporations the key to unfettered and uncontrolled development driven by profit and taking no responsibility for any damage and destruction they may cause to the environment and local communities. The public share Labour's concern in this area. Let me give the House an example of how this government's amendment is going against the grain of public opinion, where the public is asking for more input and more notification of corporate activities, and this government is instead removing these protections. This week, Sue Kedgley of the Green Party tabled the petition of Sharon Stewart, David Collins, and 1,451 others. By the way, Sharon Stewart is a National Party supporter from Howick. They requested that the House take urgent steps to prevent construction of cell phone sites and cabinets and EMR equipment immediately adjacent to residential homes, preschools and retirement villages, to prohibit cell phone towers and similar transmission devices from being erected near to educational facilities, to legislate to require community consultation and notified consent prior to the erection of cell phone towers and similar transmission devices in residential areas, so that telecommunication companies are required to consult with local communities on the location of cell towers, cell phone sites, cabinets and other EMR equipment in the area, and to seek to come up with sites that have the least impact on nearby residential dwellings and schools. The community are concerned about the phone towers because of the potential health risks it poses. If Sharon Stewart and David Collins and the 1,451 others who signed this petition are listening to this debate, they will hear clearly that the government's Clause 68 goes against the thrust of what they are seeking in their petition. The people of Howick who voted for National will be very worried with this clause and what it may mean for the development in the Howick village. Without the general presumption either for or against notifications, I believe the public can expect more and more activities by big corporations being advanced by this amendment without public input and without them taking any responsibility for corporations' activities on the lives of people and their communities. Notification is important, sir, and as my colleague, the Honourable St. Jones, has said tonight, notification is about participation. Participation is the cornerstone of our democracy in New Zealand. I've said that Labour opposes the removal of local authorities' ability to have general tree protection rules in their district plans. Clause 52 of the government's bill prohibits council from using blanket tree protection rules in an urban environment. Clause 52 says any rule must not prohibit or restrict the felling, trimming, damaging, or removal of any tree or group of trees unless the tree is specifically identified in the plan or located in a reserve or subject to a conservation management plan. Then Clause 151 requires councils to use blanket tree protection rules to get rid of them by 1st of January 2012. Labour believes that prohibiting the use of general tree protection rules undermines the ability of local authorities to decide how their local community develops. The community's response to the government's Clause 52 is simple, loud and clear, Mr. Speaker. Stop the chop, Dr. Smith. Stop the chop. I want to share with the House some recent emails sent from concerned citizens which highlight why this message is important for the government to hear. And I want to quote Thea Kavoko of Westmere, Auckland, who wrote and shared a very simple but very powerful message. Trees are living creatures and we need them. Kids play in trees, birds live in trees, trees protect us from the sun, they give us clean air to breathe, trees block noise and shelter us from the winds. And I recognise, sir, that you're wanting me to round up. So finally, from Tassim MacDonald, I find it particularly, and I quote, this is what they write, I find it particularly abhorrent that Clause 52 is supported by our leader John Key, our Minister of Tourism. What a farce to even consider trying to promote a clean green image of New Zealand, all the while sanctioning the wanton destruction of our urban forests. It is not only ludicrous but insulting to take the decision-making authority away from local government as Clause 52 does. To say that Clause 52 is a cost-saving measure is ridiculous. The cost and time involved in listing individual trees to be protected on council district plans will cost so much more, be so much more time consuming, and is an insane alternative to our current tree protection laws. Hundreds and thousands of trees will be lost needlessly and with no requirement for replanting. I honestly
I'm sorry to
cannot
interrupt the
express-
member. His time has expired.